For a long time, humanity stayed quiet. They had entered the galactic stage not with a roar, but with hope and curiosity. When the first alien fleets arrived in the skies above Mars, people expected friendship, knowledge, and maybe even unity among the stars. But instead of welcoming them, the old galactic powers treated Earth like a child that needed supervision. They said humans were too emotional, too unpredictable, too violent to be trusted with great responsibility, and so Earth was placed under what they called observation status. It sounded polite, almost diplomatic, but everyone knew what it really meant. Humans were being watched, restricted and quietly controlled. The galactic powers decided where humans could travel, what resources they could touch, and which planets they could colonize. Even the most advanced human ships were required to broadcast tracking signals to alien patrols. At first, people tried to accept it. Humanity had seen wars, disasters, and mistakes in its own history. Maybe this was a chance to learn from older civilizations, to grow wiser before taking on more power. The leaders of Earth believed cooperation was the key to respect. So they followed the rules. They avoided confrontation. They sent peaceful missions, built trade agreements, and shared their technology openly. But the galaxy never saw Earth as equal. Whenever humans made progress, restrictions followed. When Earth discovered new forms of energy, the Galactic Council declared them unstable. When humans built colonies near the asteroid belts, the aliens claimed the territory as protected zones. And when a group of scientists tried to join the Galactic Research Alliance, their application was rejected without explanation. Every step forward felt like a wall being built higher. Still, humanity kept calm. They told themselves that patience was strength, that silence was wisdom. But in the background, a quiet determination began to grow, a feeling that Earth could not remain silent forever. Beneath the oceans, inside the frozen tunnels of Antarctica, and deep within the lunar bases, humanity began to prepare for the day when patience would no longer be enough. Scientists who had once worked on peaceful research began reworking their discoveries into something more. Engineers designed engines that could travel faster than light, not just for exploration, but for protection. Small teams of experts developed advanced shielding, artificial intelligence defense grids, and even stealth systems that could hide entire fleets from galactic sensors. No one outside Earth knew what was happening. The galactic media spoke of humans as a simple race of thinkers, dreamers, and idealists. They laughed at Earth's small fleet and its outdated ships. To them, humans were curious creatures with potential, but no real power. That illusion suited humanity perfectly. For decades, Earth played the part of the harmless neighbor, while preparing for the moment they might need to stand tall. The United Earth Council called it strategic restraint. The goal wasn't to dominate the galaxy, it was to survive it. To make sure that if the day came when others tried to crush them, humanity would not go quietly. And then that day arrived. It started as a simple misunderstanding, or so it seemed. A research ship named Endeavour 7 had been exploring near Jupiter's moons, collecting energy data. It was a civilian mission filled with scientists, not soldiers. But one day their transmission stopped. Hours later, the Galactic News Network reported that the Endeavour 7 had been neutralized for violating restricted space near the border of the Vorthon Dominion, one of the most powerful alien empires. The Vorthons claimed the human ship had trespassed into their military zone, ignoring warnings. They released blurry footage showing energy readings that supposedly proved the ship was armed. But people on Earth knew the truth. The Endeavour 7 was not a military vessel. The footage was fake. And when independent investigators requested access to the evidence, the Dominion refused. Then came the final transmission, a short, shaky recording from the ship's engineer, showing flashes of light outside the window, followed by an explosion. There were screams, alarms, and then silence. The entire planet watched that video. Families wept. Scientists raged. Even the most peaceful citizens could feel something inside them breaking. For years, humanity had accepted insults, lies, and control. But this was too much. When the Vorthon Dominion issued their apology, it was cold and meaningless. They called it an unfortunate accident and offered to discuss reparations. There were no reparations, no justice, no accountability. For the first time, the United Earth Council met behind closed doors, not to talk about peace but about dignity. Every leader knew that the galaxy would not stop pushing unless Earth pushed back. But open war would mean destruction, so they decided to send a message not of violence but of strength. Project Dawnfire was activated. Few people knew that name, even within the Council. It was a secret plan that had existed for nearly 40 years, hidden under civilian research projects and scientific programs. Its purpose was simple: to ensure that if humanity ever needed to defend itself, it would never be helpless. In underground facilities beneath Antarctica, massive hangars opened for the first time in decades. Sleek starships rose from the ice, their surfaces covered with dark, mirror-like armor. They were not built for conquest. They were built for deterrence. Ships capable of moving between stars without being detected. Vessels powered by human ingenuity, not borrowed alien technology. Crews were called in silence. Pilots, engineers, analysts, and tacticians received encrypted messages simply saying, "Dawnfire protocol initiated." They didn't ask questions. They knew what it meant. As the galaxy watched Earth for signs of surrender, the real work had already begun. Artificial intelligence networks synchronized across every defense satellite. Human colonies near Mars and Titan went into coded lockdown. The old fleets in orbit suddenly received massive upgrades. Systems that had been hidden under maintenance mode for years came online. Still, the public didn't know the full scale. To them, Earth was mourning. News anchors spoke of grief, of tragedy, of peace efforts. But behind those quiet words, something powerful was forming: unity. For the first time in generations, every nation, every colony, every outpost stood together. There were no flags, no divisions. Only one message: enough is enough. As preparations continued, a strange calm filled the air. The scientists who had once been told to keep their inventions secret were now working freely. Engineers who had once dreamed of fair treatment were designing ships that could rewrite history. The stars, once symbols of mystery and hope, began to feel closer, not as distant realms owned by others, but as destinations waiting for those brave enough to claim them. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. The galactic powers believed restraint meant weakness. They thought patience was fear. But in truth, humans had been studying them, learning their strategies, their politics, their flaws. The day was coming when silence would no longer protect anyone. And somewhere deep in the quiet of space, the unfinished message of Endeavour 7 replayed one final time. A flicker of data showing the ship's last coordinates, and a short line of text transmitted before destruction. It read, "We were warned not to speak, but truth deserves a voice." That message became the spark that ignited everything that followed. It spread across social networks, colonies, and even alien broadcasts. The phrase appeared on banners, walls, and digital billboards across Earth. People whispered it, shouted it, lived it. In that moment, Earth was no longer silent. The restraint that had defined humanity for centuries began to fade away, replaced by something older, stronger, the will to stand for what was right. And as the stars glimmered in the night sky, the galaxy had no idea that beneath the calm blue planet they had underestimated, a storm was quietly awakening, one that would soon change the balance of power forever. After the destruction of the Endeavour 7, the world had changed. Streets that once buzzed with daily routines now carried a quiet tension. People no longer spoke only about their personal lives or daily work. They spoke about space, about injustice, about what it meant to be human in a galaxy that refused to respect them. Even in the smallest towns, children asked questions their parents couldn't answer. Why did they destroy our ship? Why didn't anyone stop them? The questions hurt because the truth was bitter. Humanity had allowed itself to be controlled for too long. It wasn't weakness, it was hope. They had believed that understanding and peace could soften even the hardest hearts among the stars. But the universe didn't reward patience. It only respected strength. Inside the United Earth Council, long meetings filled the nights. Representatives from every colony joined through holographic channels. Some wanted revenge, others wanted justice. But everyone agreed on one thing: silence was no longer an option. They needed to respond, not with war, but with proof that humans could no longer be bullied. Hidden far beneath the Antarctic ice, the Project Dawnfire command center glowed with activity. Giant screens displayed ship schematics, energy readings, and encrypted transmissions. Technicians moved quickly between stations, their faces calm but determined. For years they had waited for this signal. The order was clear. Prepare the Sentinels. The Sentinels were Earth's greatest secret. Starships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Sleek, silent, and built with hybrid technology that combined human creativity with fragments of ancient alien science. Each ship carried a unique AI core that could think, adapt, and communicate directly with its human crew. But these ships were not built to conquer. They were built to protect, to send a message that Earth's patience had limits. As the hangar lights brightened, massive shadows moved across the frozen walls. The first Sentinel, newly awakened, hovered quietly as its engines hummed. It didn't look like a weapon. It looked like a symbol. One of the commanders stepped forward and stared at the ship. For a long moment, no one spoke. There was pride in the air. Not arrogance, but a deep realization that humanity had finally reached a point of no return. The Earth they once knew was gone. What existed now was something far stronger, united, alert, and ready to be heard. News of the Endeavour 7 continued to spread through the galaxy. On neutral trade worlds, other species watched humans closely. Some pitied them, others mocked them. The older empires believed humans would complain for a while and then move on. They didn't realize how much humans had changed in the shadows. Weeks passed. Then one day, without warning, every galactic communication channel flickered. The symbol of Earth appeared, a glowing blue circle surrounded by a ring of stars. And then a calm voice began to speak. The message was simple. We have stayed silent for peace. We have accepted pain to avoid war. But we will not be treated as less. We will no longer allow lies, control, or destruction of our people. From this day, humanity speaks for itself. The message ended. There was no threat, no demand. Just truth. Across the galaxy, reactions exploded. Some alien leaders dismissed it as arrogance. Others warned that Earth's defiance could lead to chaos. But deep down, even they knew something was different this time. The humans were no longer asking for permission. They were declaring presence. Back on Earth, the people felt something new. Pride. For the first time in generations, they didn't feel small under the weight of the stars. They felt united, strong, and proud of what they had built together. The Galactic Council, however, was furious. Emergency meetings were called in every sector. Reports came in that human ships had begun moving toward trade routes previously restricted by alien powers. The Council decided to issue a warning. Any human vessel entering restricted space will be intercepted. The United Earth Council received the message in silence. Then they sent a short reply that shocked every leader across the stars. We no longer recognize your restrictions. That sentence changed everything. The Vorthan Dominion, the same power responsible for the Endeavour 7 tragedy, decided to show its might. A fleet of 20 warships gathered near the border of the Sol system, close enough to be seen by human telescopes. It was meant to be a warning, a reminder of who truly controlled the galaxy. But something unexpected happened. The fleet stopped moving. Their communication signals went silent. No explosions, no attacks, and just stillness. Within minutes, all 20 ships powered down, drifting helplessly in space. Their navigation systems refused to respond, and their weapons wouldn't activate. Back on Earth, Dawnfire engineers quietly smiled. Their secret weapon wasn't destruction. It was disruption. They had developed a system that could bend frequencies and interrupt alien control networks. The technology didn't kill, it disabled. It forced the enemy to listen. The galactic media panicked. For decades, no one had ever managed to paralyze a Dominion fleet. Now, a species once mocked for its emotional nature had just proven it could do the impossible, without firing a single shot. The message was clear. Earth was not to be underestimated again. Within hours, the Vorthan Dominion demanded an explanation. But Earth didn't respond with anger or arrogance. They simply transmitted a short message that echoed through the galactic network. We seek no war. We demand no conquest. But if you bring harm again, we will answer with truth and balance. Humanity will not be silent anymore. That night, the skies above Earth seemed brighter. The stars that once looked so far away now felt closer, like witnesses to something historical. People gathered in cities, on rooftops, near observatories, looking upward in silence. Elders who had seen wars on Earth whispered that it wasn't power that made humanity strong. It was unity. It was the ability to endure, to rise again after being pushed down. Even when others doubted them, humans never stopped believing in their own potential. In schools and universities, teachers played the recorded message from the council. Students listened in awe as their leaders spoke with calm courage. They weren't promising domination, they were promising dignity. They weren't asking for revenge. They were asking for fairness. The effect spread far beyond Earth. Smaller alien civilizations that had long suffered under the larger empires began sending secret messages of support. Some offered trade. Others asked for protection. For the first time, humanity became a symbol of hope, not just for themselves but for others who had been silenced for centuries. In one broadcast from a distant world, a historian from another species said something unforgettable. The humans remind us that freedom is not given, it is claimed. They were watched, restricted, and mocked, but they chose patience over rage and truth over chaos. Now they rise. That message went viral across the stars. On Earth, though, no one celebrated loudly. The Council understood this was only the beginning. The galactic powers wouldn't forgive humiliation easily. There would be consequences and political pressure, trade cutoffs, threats. But this time, humanity was ready. Every scientist, engineer, pilot, and diplomat knew what was at stake. They didn't see themselves as rebels or conquerors. They saw themselves as protectors of balance. And in the quiet of their hearts, every human shared the same thought. If the galaxy wanted to test their strength, it would find something far stronger than technology, the unbreakable will of a united species. Days turned into weeks. More sentinels were launched. They didn't patrol Earth's skies like weapons. They explored peacefully, making contact with smaller worlds, offering friendship and fair trade. Everywhere they went, they carried the same message. We seek peace, but we bow to no one. The galaxy was slowly changing. Old empires that had once ruled through fear now began to hesitate. Their fleets stayed farther from human borders. Their diplomats began using softer language. For the first time in thousands of years, the galactic powers realized that strength wasn't about how long you've ruled, and it was about how deeply you believed in what you stood for, and at the heart of it all was Earth, a small blue planet that once begged to be heard, now speaking with a calm, steady voice that echoed across the stars. The people didn't forget the Endeavor 7th. Its memory lived on in every corner of Earth, in museums, schools, and even art. It became more than a tragedy. It became a reminder. A reminder that silence, no matter how noble, must one day give way to truth. And as night fell across the cities, the stars shone brighter than ever. People looked up not with fear but with quiet pride. Humanity had finally found its voice, not through war, not through power, but through unity and courage. The galaxy was listening now. And for the first time, the universe truly heard what it meant to be human. After the message from Earth spread across the galaxy, nothing was the same again. What once felt like a cold, endless universe now pulsed with tension and curiosity. Humans had done something no one dared to do. They had spoken back. For centuries, the galactic powers ruled through fear and silence. But suddenly, one small world had broken the order that had existed for thousands of years. The reactions came fast. Some alien leaders called Earth arrogant. They said humans were reckless and would destroy themselves. Others warned that the balance of the galaxy was being threatened. But deep beneath those official words, there was something else, unease, because everyone knew it. The humans weren't supposed to have that kind of power. They weren't supposed to disable war fleets. They weren't supposed to stand toe-to-toe with empires that had existed before Earth even learned to use fire. Yet somehow they had done it, and no one knew what they might do next. Inside the United Earth Council, things were changing too. The air in the meeting rooms felt different now, heavier but also full of purpose. The leaders weren't just reacting anymore. They were planning. They understood that the galaxy was watching their every move. Every word, every broadcast, every decision would shape how the universe saw humanity. So they decided to do something no one expected. Instead of preparing for battle, they prepared for diplomacy, but on their own terms. For years, the Galactic Council's grand meetings were held on Arkel, a massive neutral planet that served as the heart of interstellar politics. It was a place filled with towering crystal halls and shining spires that reached into the clouds. Every great empire had a seat there, except Earth. Humans were only allowed to watch from a distant balcony, as observers, not participants, but this time, things would be different. The United Earth Council announced they would attend the next Galactic Summit, uninvited. The message spread across every system. Humanity will speak for itself. When the day came, a single ship left Earth's orbit, a Sentinel-class vessel known as Prime. Its hull was dark and reflective, moving through space like a shadow wrapped in light. No escort ships followed. No weapons were activated. It carried diplomats, engineers, and historians, people who believed that truth could travel farther than fear. As it entered Arkel's atmosphere, thousands of eyes turned to the sky. The ship didn't arrive through official gates or diplomatic channels. It simply appeared above the capital, silent and graceful. The Galactic Council guards moved in confusion, unsure whether to block or welcome it, and then the transmission began. A calm human voice spoke through every communicator in orbit, reaching every hall, every chamber, every home connected to the galactic network. We restrained ourselves for peace. We endured humiliation to avoid war. But today we refuse to be silent anymore. The words carried power, and not anger, but truth. The message played across massive holographic screens, showing evidence of what had been hidden for so long. The destruction of the Endeavor 7, the fake data used to justify it, and the secret orders sent by the Vorthan Dominion. Every detail was undeniable. Delegates from hundreds of species turned toward the Dominion seats, their voices rising in shock and accusation. The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. For the first time, the galaxy saw the truth not as rumor or propaganda, but as fact. And then the message continued. Humanity does not seek revenge. We seek respect. We do not wish to rule. We wish to be free. The stars belong to no single empire. They belong to all who dream. When the broadcast ended, the ship remained still above the planet. It didn't fire a weapon or make a demand. It simply hovered, calm, unafraid, and proud. That moment changed history. The Galactic Council adjourned in chaos. Some called for Earth to be punished for breaking diplomatic law. Others argued that humanity's courage had revealed something far deeper. The rot within the great powers that claimed to be guardians of peace. Back on Earth, people watched the transmission replayed again and again. It became more than a message, and it became a symbol. Children repeated the words in schools. Artists painted the Prime rising above the clouds of Arkel. For the first time, Earth's people truly believed they had earned their place among the stars. But while the people celebrated, the leaders remained cautious. They knew the galaxy wouldn't accept humiliation quietly. Hidden among the stars, the old powers were already planning their response. In the months that followed, strange incidents began to occur. Trade ships traveling near alien borders disappeared. Human colonies reported interference with their communication systems. Someone was trying to send a warning, or a threat. But humanity had learned to expect the unexpected. Project Dawnfire wasn't only about building ships. It was about preparing for survival. Secret stations hidden around the solar system began sending encrypted pulses, forming a defensive network invisible to ordinary scanners. The AI systems that ran the Sentinels grew smarter with every passing day, learning from every encounter, every signal, every word exchanged across the galaxy. Meanwhile, on Earth life continued, but different somehow. People still worked, studied, and dreamed, but there was a quiet awareness that something larger was unfolding. The news was no longer about politics or celebrity stories. It was about discovery, unity, and destiny. Humans were beginning to see themselves not as citizens of one world, but as members of a vast and ancient universe, ready to write their own story. One night, as the sun set over the blue horizon, the council met again. The atmosphere was heavy, but not with fear, with purpose. They had one question to answer. How do we move forward now that the galaxy finally knows our strength? Some believed they should form alliances with the smaller worlds that secretly supported them. Others argued that Earth should focus inward, strengthen its technology, grow its influence, and protect its people. After long discussions, they agreed on a middle path, build peace through strength. And so humanity began reaching out. Sentinels traveled beyond known space, not to fight but to listen. They visited worlds that had long been ignored by the great empires. Planets filled with voices that had been silenced for ages. Humans offered them something the galaxy had forgotten: fairness. No deals, no control, no deception, just cooperation. Slowly, the tide began to shift. The same galaxy that once saw Earth as a problem began to see it as a possibility. Trade routes opened. Shared research projects began. In just a few short years, human scientists helped smaller worlds rebuild their defenses, their communication systems, and their economies. But as Earth's influence grew, so did the unease among the old powers. The Dominion, still bitter from its public humiliation, gathered its council in secrecy. They planned a new way to bring humanity down, not through war but through politics. If they could convince the Galactic Senate that Earth was a threat to peace, the Council would have legal grounds to isolate them once again. So they spread rumors that humans were building a secret army, that they were creating weapons capable of destroying stars. They called it the Human Expansion Crisis. News networks controlled by the older empires repeated the story until millions began to believe it. But humanity didn't react the way they expected. Instead of arguing or defending themselves, Earth invited the galaxy to see for themselves. The Council opened their records, shared their technology, and allowed observers to visit their colonies. What those observers found shocked them. There were no secret weapons, no hidden invasions, only people working together for something greater. In a universe filled with deceit, truth became Earth's greatest weapon. As time passed, more worlds began to stand beside humanity. Together they formed something new, not an empire, not a union, but a movement. A belief that no civilization, no matter how small, should ever live under another's shadow. And just like that, the balance of the galaxy began to shift. In the far corners of space, even the most powerful empires started to rethink their rule. For the first time in centuries, the great galactic powers found themselves being questioned, not by armies, but by ideas. And those ideas came from one small blue planet that had once been told to stay quiet. Now, as the stars shimmered above, humanity stood taller than ever before, not because of their weapons or ships, but because they had learned that real power comes from unity, from courage, and from truth. The galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had spoken, and the universe had listened. The galaxy had changed, but peace was still fragile. Though many worlds now looked at humanity with respect, there were still powerful forces watching them with suspicion. Some believed humans were too dangerous to trust, while others feared their growing influence would end the old order that had ruled for centuries. The United Earth Council knew this fragile balance could not last forever. They had shown the galaxy the truth once before, but this time, they wanted to do more than defend themselves. They wanted to show what humanity truly stood for. Months passed as the Council worked in silence. They planned something no one expected, a second message, one that would not only reach the galactic powers but touch every corner of the universe. They called it the Celestial Broadcast. It was not meant to threaten or challenge anyone. It was meant to remind every civilization, large or small, that freedom and dignity were not gifts given by the powerful. They were rights that belonged to all. On the day of the broadcast, the same Sentinel-class ship Prime once again took flight. Its engines glowed softly as it left Earth's orbit. The ship carried no army, no weapons, and no political documents, only a single encrypted message that would be transmitted across every known communication channel in the galaxy. People on Earth gathered near screens, rooftops and open fields, watching the skies as the Prime disappeared into the stars. No one spoke much. They all felt the same mixture of pride and nervousness. The last time humanity sent a message, it had changed everything. What would this one do? Hours later, every signal across the galactic network suddenly froze. Trading posts, alien cities, space stations, and transport ships. Everything went quiet. Then a familiar voice began to speak. It was calm, steady, and deeply human. For centuries, we believed silence was peace. We believed patience would bring understanding. But now we have learned, peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of respect. The words echoed through every system. The voice continued, slow and sincere. We restrained ourselves because we hoped the galaxy would see our intentions. We believed that kindness could stand on its own. But we have realized something greater, that peace without equality is just another form of control. We refuse to live that way anymore. Images appeared across the broadcast, not of war or power, but of life. children playing under the red skies of Mars, workers rebuilding homes on distant colonies, scientists helping smaller worlds restore their damaged ecosystems. The message was clear. Humanity's strength was not in weapons but in compassion and unity. Then came the most powerful part. The voice said, "To the galactic powers, we do not seek revenge, but we will not kneel. We will speak with honesty. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves. If you call that defiance, so be it. But know this, we will no longer be silent." The transmission ended with the same phrase that had become part of human history. We restrained ourselves, but we refuse anymore. Across the galaxy, silence followed. The old powers were stunned. Some tried to block the broadcast, but it was too late. Every world had already seen it. In the distant colonies and forgotten mining stations, the message was replayed again and again. For the first time, billions felt that maybe the universe could change. But while the message brought hope, it also brought fear. The older empires met in secret. They saw humanity's rise not as inspiration but as rebellion. They worried that if other species followed Earth's path, the ancient order would collapse completely. Within weeks, whispers of political alliances and hidden threats spread through the stars. Some worlds pulled away from human trade, while others rushed to join it. The galaxy was dividing into two sides, those who wanted the freedom Earth represented, and those who wanted to hold on to control. The United Earth Council watched all this quietly. They knew conflict could break out if they weren't careful. So they made a choice that surprised everyone. They reached out to their enemies. Representatives were sent to the homeworlds of the oldest empires, carrying messages of dialogue and peace. The council didn't send soldiers or ships, just words, and a willingness to listen. It was risky. Many thought it was foolish. But humanity understood something the old powers didn't. That change built on fear never lasted, but change built on understanding could. For months, negotiations continued. There were moments of tension, moments of silence, and moments where it seemed like everything would fall apart. But slowly, something unexpected began to happen. Some of the younger leaders among the galactic powers started to question their own systems. They began to see that the humans were not trying to destroy the galaxy's order. They were trying to make it fair. Meanwhile, back on Earth, life was transforming. The old divisions between nations and colonies were fading. People no longer saw themselves as separate. Everyone understood that humanity's survival, and its new role in the galaxy, depended on unity. Students began studying alien languages in schools. Artists painted murals showing humans and aliens side by side. Scientists worked with distant species on shared discoveries. For the first time, Earth didn't just dream of the stars. It was part of them, but not everyone welcomed this change. In the shadows, a few powerful factions among the old empires were plotting to bring humanity down once and for all. They believed the galaxy would never be stable, while humans were free to speak so boldly. They began spreading false stories again, accusing Earth of secretly building a new weapon, claiming humans were planning to overthrow the Galactic Council. These lies spread fast, especially among those who feared losing power. When these rumors reached Earth, the Council didn't respond with anger. Instead, they invited every galactic ambassador to visit Earth and see for themselves. It was a bold move. For centuries, no alien leader had set foot on the planet. Now they were being welcomed with open arms. When the first diplomatic ships arrived, they didn't find military bases or secret weapons. They found open cities, peaceful oceans, and people who smiled when they looked at the sky. They saw children studying galactic history, farmers growing food for both humans and aliens, and scientists working on medical cures that could help other worlds. It was not power that won their hearts. It was sincerity. One by one, more worlds began to support humanity. They saw that humans didn't want control. They wanted balance. They didn't build empires. They built connections. But even as hope spread, the leaders of Earth stayed alert. They knew that peace was not a gift. It was a choice that had to be made every day. They continued to strengthen their technology, not for domination, but for defense. They expanded the Sentinel program, creating more ships that could protect trade routes and assist colonies under threat. Soon, the Sentinels became more than ships. They became symbols, reminders that humanity had the courage to rise but also the wisdom to protect, not destroy. And then one day, an unexpected signal arrived from deep space. It came from beyond the known territories, from a civilization so old and powerful that even the galactic powers respected it. They called themselves the Keepers of the Veil. For centuries, they had watched silently from the edge of the galaxy, observing younger species without interfering. Their message was short but clear. We have watched your world rise from the dust. We have seen your restraint, your strength, and your truth. Humanity has proven that it deserves its place among the stars. The galaxy must change, and you will help guide it. The council was stunned. Even the oldest empires could not argue with the Keeper's word. That message changed everything. In the months that followed, the Galactic Council restructured its laws. Every species, no matter how small, was given the right to represent itself. The old systems of control began to dissolve. New alliances were formed based on fairness, not fear. Humanity's journey had not been easy. They had suffered loss, betrayal, and misunderstanding. But through patience and truth, they had done what no one thought possible. They had awakened the conscience of the galaxy. On the anniversary of the first broadcast, the people of Earth gathered once again under the open sky. The council addressed them, not as rulers but as equals, as voices of a united world that had taught the universe what it meant to stand with dignity. The stars above shone brighter that night. Children pointed upward and whispered dreams of distant worlds. Elders smiled, remembering the years when Earth had been ignored and mocked. And now here they were, in respected herd, and free, and somewhere far beyond the stars. The echo of their words still drifted through the void. We restrained ourselves for peace, but we refuse anymore. It wasn't just a message anymore. It was a promise, one that would guide humanity and the galaxy for generations to come. Years had passed since humanity sent its second great message to the galaxy, the one that changed everything. Peace had spread wider than anyone thought possible. Old barriers between worlds began to fall, and for the first time in recorded history, the galaxy was moving toward real unity. But peace, no matter how strong, is never without challenge. At first, things looked bright. The newly formed Galactic Council, now fair and balanced, included representatives from every known civilization. The United Earth Council held a respected seat among them. Humans were seen as the symbol of change, a race that had once been underestimated but proved that compassion could be stronger than control. Across the stars, humans were now welcome. They built research stations with other species, shared medicines, and even opened schools where children of different worlds studied together. It felt like a dream made real, yet beneath the surface of all this harmony, something was shifting. There were whispers in the deep sectors of space, rumors that not everyone was happy with this new order. Some of the old powers, who had once ruled without question, were losing their influence and wealth. They watched as their control slipped away, replaced by councils, votes, and open trade. For them, this was not progress, and it was humiliation. Secretly, they began forming alliances again, the same way they had before humanity rose. But this time they were smarter. They didn't attack openly or spread lies through the main channels. Instead, they used quiet manipulation, turning smaller planets against one another, spreading fear that humanity's growing influence would one day lead to domination. Back on Earth, the Council started to notice strange patterns. Trade convoys were being delayed, communications between colonies were disrupted, and small border skirmishes had begun in sectors that were supposed to be peaceful. It was subtle at first, easy to dismiss as accidents or misunderstandings. But as time went on, the signs became clear. Someone was trying to break the galaxy apart again. Humanity had worked too hard to let that happen. The United Earth Council gathered in their orbital chamber, a massive structure circling the planet like a shining ring. The meeting was tense. Everyone could feel that history was about to turn once more. One of the senior counselors spoke softly. We wanted peace. We believed unity would protect us, but it seems some still believe control is strength. Another replied, if we fight again, we risk losing everything we built. The room fell silent. Everyone remembered the cost of war, but they also remembered the words that had guided humanity through every storm. We restrained ourselves for peace, but we refuse anymore. That sentence wasn't about anger. It was about courage. So instead of launching fleets or making threats, the Council made a different decision. They would uncover the truth first. They sent teams of explorers, scientists, and peacekeepers across the affected sectors. These weren't soldiers. They were investigators, thinkers, and diplomats. What they discovered was alarming. Many of the smaller planets that had once joined the Alliance were now being misled by false broadcasts. They were told that humans were building secret bases and trying to control the Council through hidden technology. The lies were clever, mixed with just enough truth to seem believable. The Council shared this information openly. Instead of hiding the problem, they broadcasted it across every known channel, saying, "The galaxy must know what is being done in the shadows. We will not respond with violence. We will respond with truth." This transparency shocked everyone. The old powers who relied on secrecy were suddenly exposed. Their manipulation was visible to billions of beings across the stars. For the first time, people began to question who was truly protecting peace and who was trying to destroy it. But the trouble didn't end there. Soon after, something unexpected happened. Deep in an uncharted sector, a massive energy surge was detected, powerful enough to affect multiple systems. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was an artificial signal, one that seemed to come from a technology even more advanced than the Keepers of the Veil themselves. The readings were unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Some believed it was a weapon, others thought it was a communication signal. But one thing was clear: it was ancient. The United Earth Council decided to send a small team to investigate, along with members of other allied worlds. The Sentinel Prime, now upgraded and trusted by the entire galaxy, led the mission. When the crew arrived at the coordinates, they found something beyond imagination, a structure floating in the void, larger than any known planet. Its surface glowed faintly, covered in markings that shifted like living light. The team couldn't understand the symbols at first, but as they approached, the ship's sensors translated fragments. The words read, "Record of the First Voices." It was not a weapon. It was a message left behind by an ancient civilization that existed long before any of the current powers. When they activated it, a beam of light spread across the system. Holographic figures appeared, not physical beings, but pure energy shaped like consciousness itself. They spoke in calm, echoing tones. "We were the first to rise among the stars," the voice said. "We built wonders, we created unity, and then we fell to pride. Every age that followed repeated our mistakes. If you are hearing this, it means the cycle continues. But maybe this time it can end." The message revealed that throughout the galaxy's history, civilizations had always risen and fallen, each one trying to rule, each one failing when greed overcame wisdom. The ancient voices had left this record as a warning to those who would come after. The crew listened in silence. Humanity's leader whispered, "Maybe this is what we were meant to find." When the team returned, the entire Galactic Council gathered to hear the message. It struck every species differently. Some were humbled, others frightened, but most understood. They had been repeating the same cycle of control and collapse for eons. The Council agreed to share the message across the galaxy. For once, no one tried to hide or twist it. People everywhere began to question what they truly wanted: endless power or lasting peace. And yet there were still those who refused to change. The remnants of the old empires saw this discovery as a threat to their remaining influence. They began to plan one last desperate move, an attack that would frame humanity as the destroyer of the ancient artifact, hoping to turn the galaxy against Earth once again. But this time, humanity was ready. The Sentinel Prime and its sister ships positioned themselves across key sectors. Every transmission and movement was monitored carefully, not for control, but for safety. When the attack finally began, a coordinated strike disguised as an accident, the truth was already being recorded. Within hours, the evidence was broadcast to every world. Everyone saw who had really started the chaos. The conspirators were exposed, their fleet stopped by their own allies who no longer wanted to follow lies. The moment the galaxy realized what had happened, everything changed again. The last shadows of the old age began to fade. The ones who had tried to keep control were gone, and the galaxy finally stood free, united not by fear but by understanding. After that, something beautiful began to happen. Worlds that had once been enemies started working together to rebuild the damaged regions. Human engineers helped alien architects restore ancient structures. Artists from distant systems painted murals together showing their shared history. Children on faraway planets learned about Earth, not as conquerors, but as dreamers who had taught the stars what it meant to stand tall. On Earth, the Council held a celebration unlike any before. They didn't declare victory, because it wasn't about winning. It was about proving that peace built on truth could survive even the darkest tests. As night fell over the planet, people gathered under the sky, watching the stars that now felt closer than ever. The youngest among them didn't remember the wars or the fear. They only knew the stories of courage, honesty, and hope. One of the council members looked up and said softly, "We used to look at the stars and wonder if anyone would ever hear us. Now the stars listen when we speak." Those words carried across the world, and soon a new message was sent, not as a warning, but as a promise. To all who hear this, we have learned that power means nothing without wisdom, and peace means nothing without truth. We once restrained ourselves out of fear. Now we choose restraint out of strength. We refuse not for war, but for justice. The signal traveled across galaxies, reaching civilizations that had never even heard of Earth before, and somewhere, beyond the deepest corners of the known universe, the ancient keepers of the veil watched quietly. For the first time they smiled. Humanity had not just joined the stars, they had changed them. And so, under the endless sky, the words that began humanity's greatest journey still echoed through time. We restrained ourselves for peace. But we refuse anymore. It was not a threat. It was not anger. It was the heart of a species that had finally learned what it meant to be truly free. The galaxy was no longer the same. Civilizations that had once ruled through fear now watched in awe as humans showed what courage, patience, and honesty could achieve. Humanity had not built an empire. They had built a path, a way for all species to rise without crushing one another. But with great responsibility comes new challenges. The United Earth Council knew this. Even after decades of careful diplomacy, the galaxy was still fragile. Old grudges lingered. Shadows of greed and ambition remained in corners that humans could not fully see. One morning, while the sky over Earth glimmered with the colors of dawn, a signal arrived from the farthest edge of explored space. It was faint but deliberate, a call for help from a world unknown to anyone. Its inhabitants were facing a crisis that threatened to destroy their civilization, and no one else had the power or will to assist them. The council immediately convened. Every seat was filled with leaders, scientists, and strategists. They knew this could be dangerous. No one had seen this sector before. There could be traps, hostile forces, or unknown hazards. But humanity had come too far to hesitate. The decision was unanimous. They would help. The Sentinel Prime led a fleet of ships across the uncharted distance. Each vessel carried engineers, medical teams, and educators, not soldiers. Every crew member understood that their mission was not to conquer or control, but to save and support. As they approached the planet, the team saw devastation unlike anything in the history of human or galactic records. Cities had been reduced to rubble. Oceans had dried in some regions. Strange storms raged across the land. The inhabitants were hiding, afraid of outsiders, unsure whom to trust. The first moments were tense. The aliens, small, fragile, and unlike anything humans had studied before, looked at the fleet warily. They had never seen a civilization act without self-interest. But humans did not demand allegiance. They simply landed, opened communication channels, and offered aid. Over the next weeks, the Earth crews worked tirelessly. They rebuilt homes using local materials combined with advanced engineering that did not destroy the planet's natural balance. They cleaned water systems, repaired energy networks, and taught the inhabitants ways to grow food more efficiently. During this time, the humans learned as much as they gave. The alien society had survived for thousands of years in harsh conditions. They had incredible wisdom about their ecosystem, survival, and cooperation. Humans listened, asked questions, and respected their culture, showing once again that true leadership comes from understanding, not control. As the planet began to recover, the aliens realized something remarkable. Humans had not come to dominate them. They had not imposed laws or rules. They had come simply to help. And in return, they had shared knowledge, hope, and a vision of unity that the planet's people had never imagined possible. News of the mission spread quickly through the galactic network. Other worlds watched humans in awe. Some had been skeptical, still expecting aggression or manipulation. But what they saw now was different. Humanity's strength was not measured in firepower, but in empathy, patience, and courage. Meanwhile, in the shadows, remnants of the old powers were growing desperate. They had lost control over the galaxy's systems, and now humans were gaining influence not through fear, but through trust and service. They realized that if humanity's example spread too far, the old empires would disappear entirely. So they tried one final tactic. They sent an envoy under the guise of peace, hoping to trick humans into conflict. They claimed that a nearby sector was under threat, and only a military response would save it. The council listened carefully. They reviewed every detail, analyzed signals, and studied every possible scenario. And then, instead of rushing to deploy a fleet for battle, they sent observers first. The observers found the truth immediately. The sector was stable and the envoy's story was fabricated. It was an attempt to lure humans into conflict, which could then be portrayed as aggression. The council acted decisively but wisely. They exposed the deception to the entire galaxy, showing evidence and reasoning. There was no war, no attack, only clarity and truth. That day, something shifted again in the minds of galactic civilizations. They began to see that humans were not just strong or clever, they were wise. They were capable of making difficult decisions without being driven by pride, fear, or revenge. As peace slowly strengthened across known space, humans returned to Earth. The planet had changed too. With decades of exploration, diplomacy, and aid missions, humanity had grown into a global community more united than ever. Borders no longer mattered. Cultures flourished together. Technology and art reached new heights. Even children born in this new era had a deep understanding of their place in the galaxy. They learned history not as a series of wars, but as a journey of courage, patience, and the fight for dignity. They understood that humans were not perfect, but they were capable of greatness when they chose cooperation over selfishness. On the anniversary of the first broadcast, the moment when humanity declared that it would no longer be silent and people gathered across cities, oceans, and mountains. From every continent, millions watched the night sky. The Sentinel Prime hovered above Earth, its lights reflecting in the oceans, a reminder of the journey that had begun decades ago. The Council addressed the people through every channel, not as rulers but as voices representing a united humanity. We once stayed silent for peace. We once endured hardship for hope. We have learned that restraint is not weakness but wisdom, and we have learned that speaking truth, offering help, and acting with courage can change the course of history. Humanity now stands not just as a species but as a guide, proof that the stars can belong to all who dare to dream together. As their words echoed across Earth, the sky itself seemed alive. Stars shimmered brighter than ever before, as if acknowledging the truth that humans had discovered. That courage, compassion, and unity are stronger than fear, aggression, or control. But even with this triumph, the Council reminded everyone that vigilance was necessary. The galaxy would always have challenges. There would be those who wanted to divide, deceive, or dominate. Yet humanity now had a reputation built on integrity. The future was not promised, but it was hopeful. In classrooms, children learned to speak multiple languages of other worlds. In workshops, engineers built devices to help distant planets survive natural disasters. Artists created songs, paintings, and performances that celebrated diversity, unity, and courage. And across every horizon, humans looked up at the stars not as conquerors, but as caretakers of hope. The United Earth Council also established a new philosophy for the galaxy, one that was simple yet powerful. True strength is not in control, but in protection. True courage is not in aggression, but in restraint. True greatness is not in domination, but in helping others rise. And with that philosophy, humans began sharing their lessons with all civilizations, not as leaders, but as partners. Their message was clear. Every being deserved dignity. Every world deserved respect, and every choice mattered. Finally, as night fell on the planet for the last time in this story, a quiet voice, one of many, carried by satellites, broadcasts, and hearts and reminded the galaxy of what had started it all. We restrained ourselves for peace, but we refuse anymore. It was not a threat. It was not anger. It was a promise. A promise that humanity would continue to act with courage, wisdom, and hope. A promise that no voice would be silenced by fear. A promise that the galaxy could be better if every being chose to act with truth and unity. And under the endless sky, across the stars that had once seemed so far, the universe listened. Humanity had reached its destiny, not through conquest, not through war, not through fear, but through the quiet, steadfast power of truth, courage, and compassion. And in that truth, the galaxy had finally found something stronger than any weapon. The journey was over. The story was complete. But the legacy, the lessons, the hope, and the courage, and would echo forever, carried in the hearts of every being across the stars. The human voice, once small and unheard among the endless stars, had finally become a light the universe could never ignore.